Welcome back to the mines. It's been quite a while since... Aw, damn it. Now, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, welcome back to the mines. And it's once again been quite a while since I posted a video in this series, but that seems to be the thing with this one. There'll be a time when I actually get the urge to work on this thing more than just in little spurts, but either way. Mines ends up actually being a surprisingly short area, considering how far into the game it is, and considering how long Caves was. There's only just the two areas, and things do ramp up a little bit in Mines 2, but not that much. There's a couple of new enemy types to worry about that'll be a huge pain, but that's pretty much the only big thing. The aesthetics take on a bit of a darker tone compared to the Mines 1 area, probably just because you're getting deeper in, and as such, you know, deeper machinery and all that. Still plenty of guild chicks to beat up, though. You'll still be dealing mostly with them and the Canadines, because honestly those are the two main enemies in this area, and all the other enemies are a bit of the more difficult to deal with variety. These two enemy types are honestly pretty easy to deal with on most difficulties. On the last one, there'll be other issues to deal with, which I'll get into at another time, but they have a particular gimmick that kind of makes things a lot more rough in this zone. Also, here's past me playing like an idiot. There's no reason why I should be getting hit by that attack. It's very predictable, and all you really have to do is just not be standing still when it fires. And of course, Sinnohs are still Sinnohs. They become absolute nightmares on later difficulties as well. And heck, even in large groups on normal, they'll still kick your ass. So just be careful about them. The mines tends to be where you first start seeing the mech gun weapons. Now, these things may seem a bit underwhelming at first, especially when you get your hands on the first one, just because it'll seem like it's doing absolutely no damage. But in the long run, mech guns actually end up being some of the most powerful weapons in the game. And the simple reason for that is just that they hit 9 times. So when you get your attack bumped up to ridiculous levels, and things don't have enough, like, absurd defense to make them not do 1,000,000 damage, hitting 9 times will just completely brutalize any enemy that happens to be in range. There's also certain mech gun combinations that are completely broken and tend to get abused the most by hunters because of their ridiculously high attack stats. There's ranger-specific mech guns that are really good, but, you know, sometimes it just can't compare to the raw numbers of hunters. It's kind of weird that they use the mech guns a bit more efficiently than other things, but just beware, you're gonna miss with them a lot. Here we have another one of those fun trap hallways that you just bring up the menu and run on through because it's a waste of time to shoot everything. And we get to already what tends to be the midpoint of Mines 2. This bridge area is one of the more memorable rooms, and as a result, when you're seeing it, you're getting decently far in. Mines 2 is honestly a pretty short area, so there's not going to be a whole lot to do. Quick demonstration of the mech guns themselves. They're doing okay damage, honestly, just because we're Hugh Castiles, so we have enough attack power to actually matter. This room can be a big problem in certain layouts of the mines, just because there's some rather nasty enemy types that you don't want to be dealing with. In a lot of quests in this particular room, there's one particular enemy type that likes to be a huge problem, and there's often a lot of them. In the meantime, though, time for more mag feeding. This thing feels like it's at such a low level compared to what I'm used to. After playing this game as much as I have, I've gotten kind of accustomed to having a maxed out mag when I'm starting a new character. It makes the early levels a complete joke and allows you to equip weapons you really shouldn't be very early. So, you know, I figured it'd probably be best for the actual videos on this to start afresh. It's not like I haven't done that a bunch of times too, so I know the feeling already. Honestly, the mech guns are still really good, even at our current level of power, so let's keep using them for a while. You can really look back on the damage to anything that has a lot of health. Okay, time to meet one of the new enemy types of Mines 2, the dump chick. These guys are really weird. If you keep attacking them to try to kill them, it takes absolutely forever. But the first time you knock one of them over so it breaks off apart and they revive just like this guy, it'll bring down a little control unit that can actually destroy all the dump chicks in the current spawn. Now, every now and then you'll see like a homebrew quest that forgets to actually include one of these, or doesn't include it on purpose, and it'll take like, just way too long to deal with one of these spawns. They're no more difficult than standard guild chicks, and heck, they even start to move even slower once they've been killed off the first time. Now, if you want to actually get experience for them, make sure to tag all of them at least once, with like just a trap or any other attack, and then destroy the control unit. You don't have to keep attacking them like I am, you can really just go for the control panel there and get everything done. Basically, what I was just trying to demonstrate is how long it can take to kill one of these guys normally. Now, imagine a room filled with these guys and having to take them all out like 4 or 5 times before they finally explode. Yeah, any of you homebrew quest authors that decide not to include the detonate all dumb chicks thing? You realize how annoyingly tedious that is, right? You realize how not fun that is? How boring it is? You probably shouldn't do that. But, oh well, they're homebrew quests. They'll be as ridiculous as ever. I should probably show a few of those, honestly, just to kind of emphasize that simple thing. Either way, though, let's keep on moving on. The mines tend to be filled to the brim with traps. Having an android character helps out a lot, so you can actually see and destroy all these, instead of falling for all of them. I mean, eventually you'll just memorize the solutions to everything, but it's a fair bit to memorize because of all the different layouts. It's not that hard, but it helps to just be able to shoot them. Of course, if you're playing with other people, there'll always that one person that goes and face tanks the traps anyways, so I guess there's that solution. Pretty much just suspect any room that has a whole bunch of different switches or prizes that you can try to get, because they're usually full of traps. And of course, any long hallway tends to be filled to the brim with them as well. Man, can you imagine getting hit by all those one by one? That just suck and waste a lot of time and heals. Mines 2 also has another one of these small open rooms, just like in the first Mines. Coloration's a little bit different, but it also acts as another kind of landmark room for you to keep in mind as well. That's one thing about the randomized layouts in this game, is there'll always be these little landmark rooms you can remember, and they're always placed at about the same point in a run. That way it's a little bit easier to understand just whereabouts you are, even though there's only so many layouts in the game. Also, you can shoot the dump chick controller even before it comes down, if it's in a position that you can get a lock-on on it. There'll be some missions in areas where that's not possible and you do have to destroy a dump chick first, but you know, whatever works for you. I suppose another thing to note is that if forces are just spamming spells, sometimes they'll take out the controller just by virtue of area of effect. Also, isn't shock fun? Had to wait around for, I think, 7 ticks in that noise before it actually goes away? It can be one of the most problematic statuses in the entire game, so having something that actually nullifies it is always a big help. It's also one of the only reasons to carry soul atomizers around for anything but mag food. Alright, so we've made our way into one of the last giant arenas of this particular zone. I'm gonna keep saying particular. I don't know why I keep saying particular, but I just keep saying it. Either way, there's a good chance that we'll be running into the other new enemy type in this area. So I don't know what the heck was wrong with past me constantly getting sniped by Canadines. They're not even that difficult to deal with. If we do end up encountering the new enemy, though, it has a bit of a history, let's say, with being the biggest pain in the ass in this entire zone, by a considerable margin. Maybe not on the earlier difficulties, but definitely on the later ones. They have some pretty stiff competition, too, considering Sinnohs in general exist. Speaking of, there was the Sinnoh Golds running around. I mean, we've already seen them. They're pretty much the same as Sinnoh Beats. They actually do less damage, but they can sometimes heal. Ooh. They still have the same properties as other Sinnohs, though, which is getting directly in your face and being a pain in the ass. There's definitely a couple of quests I can point out that are the ones you go to if you want to experience just how annoying Sinnohs can get. Oh boy. A couple of them are official quests, too, so you can actually see what happens when Sega goes a little overboard with an enemy type. Oh. Lost Soul Blade, anyone? Don't do it unless you really need to hunt Sinnoh. Ah, there they are! Say hello to the Garands! These things are very special! Okay, so Garands are actually surprisingly complicated. they'll kind of move around and start firing homing missiles at you. And the more of their armor you chip off, the more homing missiles they fire. Now, the big problem with those homing missiles is that they tend to stack up on one another. And if they all hit you at the same time, you don't get any invincibility period between them. You just take the damage of all of those missiles at once. This is one of the most likely enemies to just one-shot you before you get to the ultimate difficulty. And just to make matters worse, on the higher difficulty, you tend not to have, like, very much in the way of invincibility frames either way. So you just get pegged again and again and again and again by the missiles and just get evaporated. When there's more than one of those on screen at a time, the probability of just getting murdered is fairly high. You definitely have to be very careful when you're managing them. The missiles also travel faster on the higher difficulties. An interesting property of Garans, though, their missiles can actually impact anything, so you can actually steer the missiles into themselves or other enemies. This tactic actually works fairly well for getting rid of them if there's only a couple on screen. But the thing to note is, them pegging the other enemies doesn't count as you hitting them, so if you haven't hit the enemy at all before the missiles take them out, you don't get the experience for it. So, yeah, kind of measure the pros and cons of actually getting your experience versus getting murdered if you're not very confident with your ability to deal with them. I mean, to be perfectly honest, you're gonna have to get good at dealing with them anyways, because they're one of the most spammed enemies in pretty much any quest type I can think of. But, you know, they're there. They're gonna destroy your ass, and all those other terrible things that they do to you. Thankfully, though, we're playing on normal, where it's actually possible to survive, like, 3 missiles. So even if we get hit by a bunch of them at the same time, we should still be okay. It's definitely the first thing in the game that's been the most likely thing to actually kill me, though. Honestly, thinking about it, there's about 1 or 2 other enemy types I can think of in the next area that might be equally as threatening, but that's about it. Normal's thankfully a bit of a cakewalk. It helps you get used to the game and kind of learn a little bit of the enemy types. The AI gets gradually more difficult as you go up the difficulties, mostly just from speed. Only the last one really makes much of a difference. Welcome to the last major room in this layout of the mines. First priority should be pretty much just running by all the guild chicks and getting the light switch back on, unless you really want to deal with the darkness. Not that hard to get by them, so all you really do, bring up the menu so you won't actually log on to them and slow yourself down, and just slip in here. Now, it is the last major spawn of enemies for the entire run, so this is going to be a mixture of a whole bunch of different enemy types and possibly pose some form of threat. Of course, all those different guild chicks and dub chicks firing their lasers tends to make this a bit more annoying. That's the one thing with being at a distance from any of this enemy type. They'll happily just try to keep shooting you. And the slows are really not helping. You can stop with lasers now. It's really quite annoying. The lasers are kind of a weird little thing. You have to be a certain distance away from them to actually be able to dodge them in the first place. If you're closer up, they tend to fire around fast enough to just nail you anyways. So, this is definitely a room that benefits a lot from having other people. It's not that much of it to have a problem on one person though, so just go ahead and get rid of everything bit by bit. Some area of effects, things like shotguns and partisans and swords and whatnot will be your best bet. It's kind of funny, forces have it really easy in this area, on the earlier difficulties at least, because pretty much everything is weak to electricity. That's not honestly very surprising, it's a bunch of robots! At the same time, though, I should probably not just stand there and get my ass killed, so yeah, might want to actually use some of those healing items that are laying around, you know? Sometimes I can be kind of stingy with those, and it does get me killed sometimes. Because it's just like, I don't want to use it right now. If I use it right now, I'll waste some of the potential healing. Either way, though, the final spawn of this room is 2 Garans! Remember what I mentioned about making sure to hit them first? So essentially what I wanted to do was poke one of them, go ahead and get it to kill itself with its missiles, as well as the missiles on the other side of the room. Then I wanted to try to run over to the next one, quickly poke whatever enemies are left, just like that, and then let the missiles do their work as well. Honestly, once you're strong enough, you can just unload everything onto them anyways, and you'll usually kill them before they fire too many missiles. Just be careful about that though, as you'll want to immediately retreat once you kill them, as there's more than likely going to be a flurry of missiles in the air. Kinda like that, for example. Oh, apparently I didn't quite finish off everything of the last spawn, so there's one last kill chick that wanted to say hello. With that, though, there's basically nothing left in the mines. All we have to do is run around and get the different little items that are laying about, and then head for the boss. There's still some stuff that requires significant backtracking, just take a look at a couple of boxes, but may as well show what you're supposed to do. The mines are such a weird breed overall, though. Not only are they rather short for the stage that this late into the game compared to, like, anything else, but in the highest difficulty, it also doesn't actually have anything that one-shots you. Every other stage, even the forest, has something that casts some form of instant death, whether it just be the spell that instantly kills, or it's just an attack that does like 10,000 damage that you can't survive no matter how much health you have. That said, it does have Garams, so they're fairly likely to immediately kill you before you can react if you screw up, so it's something, but it's still not instant. It does have to hit with like 2 or 3 missiles sometimes. And yeah, I mean, this is weird. It's also a fairly relaxing place. I mean, in most instances of the mines, you don't have huge piles of Garans or Sinnohs, so you don't have to worry too much. There's a lot of quests, though, that will completely ruin your face here. I think the difficulty for this zone is a bit more in line on the quests, in terms of how they scale, rather than the actual zone itself, because this place is actually quite a bit easier than the caves for the most part. You may recall the switch that we actually pressed a little ways back. Yeah, that was a fake. That's the one that actually gives you access to these boxes for real. So, if you want to actually go ahead and get the prizes in those boxes, you have to walk all the way back around. Hopefully I'll at least get a better weapon or something. I mean, doing this trek is usually not worth it. So, a normal it can be okay if you're just starting out, because there might be a new weapon or something in there, or an upgrade to something you currently have, since that particular box type is more likely to have things like that. But on any successive difficulty, there's just not really any point. You're probably already using things far better than what would come out of boxes. So what's our grand prize? We get a different partisan, a couple of different partisans, the telepipe to go do some inventory management. Yeah. And here we randomly use a photon blast, because my bar was full and I just felt like it. Ha! Either way, though, our pockets are full, so it's time for a jump cut! Alright, with the pockets successfully emptied, more healing items and mag food purchased, all we have to do is walk back to the boss teleporter, and we can finally take on the boss for this stage. Not gonna say particular. Not gonna say... Oh. Vocal habits. Either way, though, the boss of this area is actually a lot less annoying than the cave's boss. And it's gonna be pretty noticeable throughout the... actually fighting it. For a start, it won't actually take 10 minutes like last time. So let's hurry up and get going. Say hello to the boss of the mines, Bull-Opt. Now, I just end up calling it Violent Operations, because that seems like something that would make sense for a name like that. It's gotta be an abbreviation, right? Either way, it's a crazed computer virus gone, well, you know, crazy. It'll take over various parts of the machinery in the room and attempt to attack you with it. This boss is rather unique. There's actually multiple different ways to defeat it. When it's in the monitors, it's completely vulnerable, but do note, it only takes the damage of your normal attack, so even if you use a heavy attack on a monitor, the boss will only take the lesser damage of the normal attack, so all using a heavy is going to do is destroy the monitor faster. But that's the thing, there's more than just the boss's HP bar that you can do. You can also destroy all the machinery in the room to move on to the next phase. Depending on the difficulty, the feasibility of actually destroying everything before the boss itself runs out of HP, though, is kind of up in the air. On normal, you're way more likely to actually drain the HP bar than you are to destroy everything in the room. Now, you don't actually have to destroy all the monitors. The pillars themselves are the important part. On normal, I tend to take a bit of a stun lock approach to this boss. If you space out your attacks just right while he's trapped in the monitors, then they won't be able to move, and you can get a ton of damage in that way. Now, of course, the monitors will eventually explode, and so you'll have to move on from there. But that's the only thing. Now, for the pillars themselves, you can stun lock them in a similar fashion, and it's actually something you probably should do, because the pillars will actually attack you. You can tell which one is the actual boss, since they'll be the pillar that's blinking red. Now, there's also one other thing you can do in the lower difficulties. That electroconductor in the middle of the room, if you shoot it enough, it'll actually come down to the center. And then when the pillars use their electric attack, it will stun the boss for a considerable amount of time. You'll probably be suffering shock at the same time, though, but if you use an atomizer, you can go ahead and get a lot of damage off. Also, this boss has 2 full orbs! The first one went by kind of quick. Form 2 has full up taking over some sort of modular robot. Each of the 4 modules has its own little attack. It has pretty long tails for every one of them, so avoiding them's not that difficult. On Ultimate, avoiding the missiles, for example, becomes kind of pointless, because they'll probably hit you anyways. But, once again, there's a couple of different ways to go about this boss. You can either focus fire on particular modules that you don't like, and destroy them outright, causing them to no longer have access to that attack. Or you can just kind of start whipping away at the center of the body with a long-range weapon, such as a partisan. Or, something that'll hit multiple targets, like a shotgun. This will allow you to do more damage to the boss's actual HP bar rather than the modules themselves. And if you actually manage to bust all the modules and Volof's still alive, then it literally can't do anything, so it just sits there and tanks the rest of your hits until it explodes. The modules themselves all have different HP values too. This one, for example, that locks on and then tries to smash you, has a ridiculous amount of HP, so most of the time this one's not going down before the boss does. The healing module doesn't really deal very much anyways, but it's very easy to destroy. It has the lowest health out of all of them. The central module, which fires the ball that attempts to trap you and then laser you to death, that one is the most threatening module because, of course, if you get hit, you might actually get one shot, which is, always sucks during boss. But it has a fair amount of health too, so it's going to be a little bit tricky to get rid of, especially since this side module often gets in the way when you're trying to shoot it. Either way, though, this is not a very difficult boss at all. You might get killed by it once or twice on your first time through the game, but I don't really suspect you to get killed very much after that until you've reached the highest difficulty where it actually has a lot more threatening stuff to do. This version of it, not so much, but the first form's definitely a real thing on Ultimate. Either way, though, the boss has actually already shown us everything it can do. I don't particularly want to get hit by the laser of, well, it wouldn't kill me instantly, but it would do a lot of damage. But yeah, essentially what happens when that ball hits you is you get trapped in a little barrier and you can't actually get out of it by yourself. If you're with teammates, they can shoot the barrier and free you. Otherwise, Volof will slowly charge a whole bunch of different lasers that'll fire upon you while you're trapped, and it does huge amounts of damage. And this is actually the only module that Volof has left. Okay, time for it to spam the homing ball constantly. It's actually kind of rare that this ends up being the only one left. I'm used to the side module being around for far too long. I'm also kind of surprised it's not dead yet. I mean, I know I've been focusing fire on trying to cripple it, just to kind of show it, but either way, it's dead now. As you can see, that boss was much easier and much faster than Day Relay. A lot less force damage overall, so you can kind of deal with it. Stun locking the first floor makes it so you don't really get hit by very much at all before it goes down. Definitely a very relaxing boss, and there's not really a character type that struggles with them at all either. Even forces can kind of get the best of it, because their lightning magic can actually do a number on the first form. Later on, of course, it will get more difficult, but that'll be for future demonstrations or whatnot. You get quite a few prizes out of this as well, so Vines is not a bad place to go if you feel like you need a little bit more experience before taking on the end of the game. That's all it's short, so you can get that boss EXP boost pretty quickly. And just have kind of an alright time with the slightly easier enemies. I mean, you can do caves a couple of times if you want to, but I honestly try to not do caves very often, it's kind of boring. Either way, though, that's gonna do it for the mines. There's a little bit more to it on the GameCube, actually, so I'll probably show that here in a minute. But either way, let's go ahead and head back to Pioneer 2. With the mines finished, this only leaves one area in Episode 1, and not surprisingly, it's the hardest and the longest, known as the Ruins. There's some real nasty enemy types there that we'll be getting into, but for the time being, that's gonna do it for now. So, thanks for watching this as I finally got this produced, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!